A very good morning to you. How are you doing? Welcome to another beautiful Thursday morning. And if it's Thursday, you know it's time for the Relationship Clinic. Kama kawaida, bench nimewawekea hapo nje na nimeisafisha na nimeisanitize. Mkaya mmoja mmoja na msisukumane. One of the most frustrating things is to have expectations that are not met, or expectations that seem to be ignored, and that is one cause of major fights in a lot of relationships, especially marriage relationships. You have this expectation. Whether it has been communicated or not, that's another story. But the fact is, you have this expectation and your spouse does not meet it. Your spouse ignores it. They don't even talk about it. They don't even acknowledge it. It's like it's not there. It is such a frustrating thing. You feel like you want to pull hairs out of your head, or maybe out of your spouse's head. How do you deal with that? How do you deal with unmet expectations, or maybe even unspoken expectations? That's what we want to look at today. And maybe you're thinking, today you are in my hood. That is what I'm going through in my marriage. Well, here we are. We'll have an interesting conversation. I pray that through this conversation, you'll be able to get some tips and some ideas of how to solve that stalemate. It's a beautiful Thursday morning. Relationship Clinic, Unmet Expectations is what we are looking at on today's discussion. So glad to be joined in studio via Zoom by Christabel Ndanu, who is a counseling psychologist. Christabel, how are you doing?
Thank you.
Good to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Good to have you on the show today. Karibu sana.
Asante sana.
Maybe we can begin by defining what are we talking about when we say unmet expectations?
Okay, thank you. When we're talking about expectations, I think we first need to define what is an expectation.
Uh-huh.
An expectation is it's an anticipation or a prospect for the future.
Mm-hmm.
You're looking forward to something. That's an expectation.
Mm-hmm.
So when we are talking about unmet expectations, what are these? We need to unpackage. First, why are we getting married? Before even we start thinking about these expectations.
Yes.
What are our reasons of getting into marriage?
Uh-huh.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So people do have many reasons of getting into marriage. Some could be healthy reasons, some could be unhealthy.
Yeah.
Sometimes you find that somebody can get into marriage because then they are lonely and they want that companionship. But remember, there's a difference between being lonely and being alone.
Oh, yes.
Right?
Yeah.
If you're lonely, even when you get into marriage, that will not tick the box for you.
Mm-hmm.
You need to work on yourself. So when you're getting into marriage to make sure that, now you have that companionship, you're not lonely, that just doesn't work.
Yes.
And it becomes sort of an expectation that could be unmet for you because nobody can complete you. You need to get in there as your own self, completing your own self.
Mm-hmm.
Other reasons could be pressure, either from your own parents, it could be from your friends, could also be from society.
Okay.
At a certain age, perhaps you're expected to tick that box. And so you decide, hey, let me jump in.
Yes.
Let me get married, at least I'll tick that box. And that just doesn't work. Because then at the end of the day, you're with that person. And if you're not compatible, it becomes a problem for you.
Mm-hmm.
Other reasons sometimes could be that you're on the rebound.
Oh, yes. That's a huge
one. You've come from a relationship and you're on the rebound now. You can't deal with that hurt. So you're thinking, if I got married, that would help you to be able to deal with the hurt. Or even on the other flip side of it, the other person will see they were not all that. You got someone else.
Yeah.
So sometimes people tend to act on the rebound and they decide to get married. And that's really an unhealthy reason of getting into that space. Sometimes you may find that somebody is also looking for some maybe financial stability.
Mm-hmm.
You've hustled and you're thinking, if I got married to this person who seems to have made it,
yes,
things will work out for me. And what you forget is that, life has many twists and turns.
Yes.
You might get in there with that person who is stable, but after some time you find things just happen and that money is not there. So where does that leave you? Sometimes you may find also people might be looking for some independence. Perhaps you're living with your parents and you want out.
Yeah.
You just can't deal with all the rules in the home. So you're thinking that's an easier way out. So you might decide, if I get married, I have my own freedom. I have my own independence. Yeah. Things like, you're also looking at, I don't know how to put this, but it's not really stability, your own emotional stability.
Yeah.
Where you've gone through a lot of stuff and you're thinking this other person will complete that for you. Because then you're going to marry a person who's loving, who is understanding, according to your own worldview. That's what you're thinking. So you get into that space hoping that will happen. Okay? And so when you get in there, you realize, wow, it's not what you imagined. That just becomes another unmet expectation for you. But also people do genuinely marry for love.
Yeah.
Where they feel there's that connection and you feel that this is the right person for me and I would want to spend the rest of my life with them. Sometimes people also feel, yes, it's time and God is leading me in this direction.
Yes.
This, to settle down with this person and build a home and a family together. So those are some of the reasons why, people do get into marriage.
Okay. I'm just thinking about what you shared earlier, and I'm wondering, I'm looking at our young people today and thinking back to when I was their age, and it seems like expectations have really changed. Would you say also society and culture has a big role to play in this?
Yes, it does. Definitely it has. Because you see, a lot of our expectations come from somewhere.
Yeah.
And you're right when you say that culture and society has actually shaped how we view, the expectations we have, right? Like our young people, they are all about watching all this Hollywood stuff and everything. And sometimes you think that's how it's going to go down.
Yes.
When you get married, But you and I know that's just not the case.
Yes.
Yeah? So what are some of the expectations that people have when they are getting into marriage? People get in there hoping that, I'll get married to this loving person who will understand me.
Yes.
Somebody who will love me unconditionally. Those are some of the reasons. You're getting into marriage thinking, I'll get into this marriage with this person who will talk about everything, my heart, my feelings. He'll create that time.
Yes.
And I can see you're smiling.
I'm smiling because after you get married, you realize this guy doesn't talk that much. What happened to him? And the guy is thinking, this woman talks a lot.
Yes, I know. And sometimes you're thinking that your love life is going to be very exciting. You're going to do a lot of things together. You're going to be financially stable. Those are some of the reasons. As guys are getting into marriage, they're thinking this is how it's going to be.
Yeah.
Because you're also basing it in the state of mind at the time of courtship. When you're courting, a lot of things are unspoken sometimes.
Yeah.
And things look very rosy, look very nice, but when you get in there, you realize some of these expectations, it's only God who can fulfill them for you.
Wow.
Yeah?
Yes.
Some of these expectations, no man can fulfill them for you. Okay?
Yeah.
So when we are talking about expectations, I think we need to kind of talk about where do our expectations come from.
Yeah. But even before we go there, I want to take you back a bit to the whole dating scenario. Because it seems like people, when they're dating, they don't talk about what they're expecting you're so focused on getting married, but you never actually set the stage to talk about what I'm expecting, because you're two different people who have two different understandings of what marriage is based on what you saw where you are raised. But somehow we don't come together to talk about this thing. So at what point should people in a relationship begin to express, these are my expectations? Because here we are dating, we get married, and me, I'm expecting I'll come back from the work, get home, niekele mguu juu ya meza, kachai kakuje, and I get there and I'm thinking, where is the tea? And the wife is telling me, get it for yourself. And I'm thinking, which kind of woman is this? So when do we start talking about what we expect and what picture we have in our minds?
I think when you do set out, you're in a relationship and you're thinking we are heading in this direction of marriage, it's important to have premarital counseling.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have premarital counseling, you need to actually go to a place or a facility where you're going to talk about real issues. Okay?
Yes.
So that you're not leaving anything, just like a gray area.
Yeah.
Premarital counseling addresses things to do with culture.
Mm-hmm.
You could be getting married cross-cultural. There are some aspects there that come in.
Yeah.
What will be expected of you when you get married to this person?
Very true.
But what is the family expectations of you as a wife in that community? And I'm not trying to say that I'm not trying to bring tradition here, but some of those things you cannot actually, you can't quite run away from them. They're there. That's the reality.
Yes.
That's the reality, right? There are also things to do with money issues. Sometimes you're coming into marriage with your own different investments.
Mm-hmm.
Nowadays, people work and they've invested in different things. So how do you reconcile the two? Those are things that you need to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
If you're blessed with children, how will you parent those children?
Yes. How many children?
Those are things that you need to talk about.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah? Those are things that you need to talk about even as you do your premarital counseling.
Mm-hmm.
You also need to talk about matters to do with religion, spirituality.
Aha.
Yeah? Because that comes in when you find that perhaps this person belongs to a certain denomination or religious grouping that does not align with you.
Mm-hmm.
And so you cannot just sweep that under the ground. Perhaps for us, you go to church on Sunday, you start from 8 to 5.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
And Sunday is church. There's nothing else. For me, maybe it's just an hour, popping into the service, finish the service and do other things. There are all those dynamics that come in. And when they are not addressed from the onset, then they contribute to these unmet expectations.
Mm-hmm.
Because you get in there and you realize we are so different.
Yeah.
I didn't see this coming.
Yeah. But
you didn't talk about it because you are focused so much on the wedding and not the marriage.
Wow.
How will I look with that dress? How will it be? What will people eat?
Yes. We're having a very interesting conversation this morning talking about unmet expectations in relationships and in marriage. If you have a thought or a question and you want to jump in and be a part of this conversation, I'm inviting you to do so. 20316 is the SMS line. WhatsApp number 0786 316 316. Christabel, I'm just wondering, could it be that sometimes we have all these expectations that may be even unrealistic because we don't understand what marriage is about?
Yes. Most of the expectations that we have sometimes are unrealistic.
Mm-hmm.
And as I mentioned just before we took the break, we are getting into marriage with our own different expectations based on our own experiences, based on what we've gone through, our past experiences, what we know, what we have read about marriage. So some of them could be unrealistic. You're expecting this person to tick all the boxes, be caring, be loving, and that's just not possible.
Yeah.
That's why I said some of those expectations can only be met by God and not a human being.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe we can now look at where do these expectations come from?
Okay.
Because I believe they come from somewhere.
Yes.
And I think I would want to look at our expectations and use the analogy of a tree.
Mm-hmm.
The way the tree is with a trunk?
Yeah.
And then it's got different branches.
Mm.
So when I'm looking at a tree, that represents my family of origin.
Mm-hmm.
And it's got all different branches. Okay?
Yes.
Family of origin is a key part to where our expectations are shaped from.
Uh-huh.
Because I'm a product of how I grew up. The experiences that I had while I was growing up, even as an adult, that defines and changes your own worldview. So when we are talking about family of origin,
Mm-hmm.
we're looking at issues to do with perhaps attachment,
Mm-hmm.
where you find some families, there's emotional cutoff. People don't just bond. There's this thing that, everyone to their own.
Yes.
There are families who are like that.
Yes.
Okay? So that informs me of what a family is. There are some families where you find there's a lot of enmeshment or poor differentiation.
Mm-hmm.
What I mean by that is that, the roles are not defined.
Yes.
Everyone is in everyone's business.
Mm.
If this has happened to this, we all must congregate. We must
Yes.
see what is the solution.
Yes.
So that informs the way I look at family and the way I look at marriage.
Mm.
So when I'm getting into a marriage situation, perhaps I'm expecting that is how things will be.
Wow.
Yeah?
Yes.
And yet the other person perhaps did not grow up that way, did not have that experience.
Mm.
So you find you're having this sort of conflict. The conflicts just become a bit more because then you're not able to understand where that other person is coming from. If somebody has come from a home that is dysfunctional,
Mm-hmm.
their idea of a well-functioning, home might not really be clear because what they saw as they grew up was a lot of dysfunctionality.
Yes.
While somebody who came from a home that things ran, the way they should be,
Mm-hmm.
and things were done the way they should be, they might have a better sort of understanding in terms of how a marriage should work.
Yeah.
But guess what? All this, you bring it into your marriage. And that becomes an expectation that is not met.
Yes.
Because you are not on the same page.
So I'm wondering, would you say then it's important for couples when they are still at the dating stage, now they know they're headed towards marriage, is it important to talk about their background and how they grew up, and how things were handled in their homes? Because then that begins to paint a picture of what their perception of life in a home is all about.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's an area sometimes that is not talked about.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's an area that is key because once you don't talk about those things, remember that has informed who you are.
Yes.
It has informed how you look at things. So when you get into marriage, that is your mindset.
Mm.
That is your mindset. So when you don't talk about it, it becomes an area of conflict.
There's a pastor friend of mine who's a marriage counselor as well, and he loves using this example, which is very hilarious, but I think it brings out what you're saying. And so he says how, for him, one time they had this argument with the wife because the previous night they had chicken and then there were leftovers. So the next day when he comes, he's expecting to be served chicken, and he's brought the hubs, as we call them, hubs with no chicken, and he's wondering, where is the chicken? And the wife says, the children ate the chicken. And they actually get into a serious argument about
Yes.
the leftover chicken, and this man is not happy at all. And then a couple of days later, they revisit the issue, and what came to light was very interesting, because the wife says, for her, how she grew up, the father would make sure that everybody is fed before he eats. If there are any leftovers, they
Yes.
go to the children first. If they remain, they go to the wife. If it still remains, then the husband is the last one on the line. But now for the husband, it was the opposite. The father is served first. The children are served.
And the good pieces.
And the good pieces. And if there are any leftovers of the meat, that is the father's portion. No one should touch it.
Yes.
And when they got to that realization, they began to laugh about it, because it's something so small, but it can actually break a home, because that's how we were brought up.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And that takes me to family traditions.
Oh.
Yeah. Every family has its own traditions. The way they do things,
Yeah.
the way they carry themselves. You know, there are certain things that just dictate, are just in particular families.
The way they
there are
spend
families
Christmas. That's a Christmas
there are
is a big one.
families-
Yes.
Yes, there are families who must eat together on the table every evening. It's part of their tradition.
Yeah.
Now, you've come from such a family, and you're meeting somebody who you picked your food from the kitchen and you moved to the direction that you wanted, and you ate your food on your own. So you see, you're there wondering, I mean, what's going on? But you see, your own family traditions from your family of origin have dictated the way and your own perception of how things should run in the home.
Wow.
Yeah? There are also certain cultural things that people do, you know, celebrations that everybody is expected to attend, to gather together to do, you know, to celebrate something has happened, an important date, a birthday, anniversaries, those kind of things. It's not every family that is a value for them, that is a tradition for them.
Yes.
So when you don't talk about those things, then it becomes a problem. It becomes an unmet expectation in your marriage.
Wow.
And sometimes, because you don't want to talk about it, it's unspoken. And unspoken expectations are the silent killer in any relationship.
Wow. I think sometimes the assumption we make is how I grew up is how everybody else grew up.
Yes.
Yeah, and so we don't even need to talk about it. And then sometimes there's the whole issue of if you really love me, then you would know what to do and what not to do. But I haven't actually explained to you what I desire and what I want.
Yes.
So would you say communication plays a big part in this whole scenario?
It does. Because sometimes we expect our spouses to be like a mind reader. Somebody who will just get it. You know, you know that women like to be treated in a certain way. But if you don't verbalize it, then that becomes an expectation that is not met because the other person has no idea. You know?
Yes.
Other things also to do with your own family values and your belief systems.
Ooh, that's a big one.
Yeah?
That's a big one.
In some families, they value things like honesty. They value fidelity. They value commitment. They value respect. That might not be the case in another family.
Yes.
So you come and you're wondering, okay, how did this person grow up? And so you kind of, you're stuck at a place where you're feeling your way is the better way. And that already brings a problem because then you might not be willing to compromise on anything.
Wow. You know, you say that and I'm reminded of a situation where, you know, you have this individual, for them, they value a good, comfortable home. And so they spend a lot of money on furniture. I mean, if they see nothing, if they see something good, they buy it. Yeah?
Yes.
The kitchen may be bare without anything to eat, but the guy will buy sofa sets worth I don't know how many thousands of shillings. But then you have your spouse who, for them, they value health more than even material things. And so for them, all their money goes into a good, balanced meal. I mean, they're spending a lot of money. And so that already begins to bring a conflict where finances are concerned, because your values are in opposite direction. And you never talked about it.
That's right. Something else is also the communication style.
Oh.
How do you communicate? Some people, as you started by saying, are more on the quiet side. They are more on the reserved side.
Yes.
Here you meet somebody who is very bubbly and is the life of the party.
Yes.
Communication style also does play a role in unmet expectations. Yeah, your language of communication. Are you open to communication, or are you a bit more closed? Things to do with conflict resolution, just alongside that communication. When there's a conflict, how is it handled? Perhaps in your family of origin, things were just left to sort themselves out. 3 weeks down the line, people will get it that this other person is angry and they'll come around. Maybe you're coming from a place where there was open communication.
Yes.
You know, don't let the sun go down in your anger. So you make sure that if there's a disagreement, there's a conflict, people talk about it. It's not the same for everyone. Some people, when there's a conflict, they decide to just, for lack of a better word, to just zoom out and be quiet, what you might call kneel by mouth.
Yeah.
So there's no talking until a time when they feel ready. On your side, you're wondering what's going on, because you are used to that open, attacking the issue as it comes and dealing with it.
Very true.
So that also becomes an expectation that is not met, and a point of conflict also in the marriage.
Okay. This morning we are talking about unmet expectations. If you have any thoughts or questions you want to ask, 20316 SMS line, WhatsApp number 0786 316 316. Don't wait until 5 minutes to, and then you bombard me with all the questions in the world. If you have questions, you can throw them in now. It is the Relationship Clinic on this beautiful Thursday morning, talking about unmet expectations in marriage. Joining us via Zoom, counseling psychologist Christabel Ndanu Mugasa, giving us some very vital information. Christabel, I have a couple of questions coming in for you. One is from a couple who are still dating. And so this lady is asking, what do I do when I realize that my picture of marriage and this gentleman's picture of marriage are not really aligning? We love one another, yes, and we are going towards marriage, but I'm beginning to realize our perceptions and pictures are different. How do I handle that situation?
Okay, thank you for that, James. Marriage and any relationship is about compromise. You will never find somebody who ticks all the boxes. But what are you willing to give? If how important is the relationship to you? There are some things that you can say, we will meet somewhere. You meet me here and I meet you here. We compromise. Okay? What are you willing to give? Because then if there's no compromise and sacrifice, it can't work. There could be things that you say, for this one, I cannot. Then you need to make a decision on whether you need to move forward with the relationship. But even when you get into marriage, it's about compromise. You will never meet a person who ticks all the boxes for you. Because you've been brought up in a different way. There are different experiences you've gone through that have shaped your own worldview of the way you look at things. Yeah.
Another question is, what do you do when your husband, you keep sharing your expectations, but your husband seems to ignore them and never takes them seriously?
Okay. Perhaps I think it's good to look back at where did this start? When did it start? Has it always been the case? What is the genesis of him ignoring you? Has it always been the case? And if it has always been the case, you've lived with it. So what has changed for you? Yeah. Sometimes people get in situations where they feel they cannot actually get to a place where they can be able to reconcile or agree to disagree.
Yes.
Then I would advise that you see a marriage therapist to support you and help you to walk through whatever you're going through.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Earlier on, you were talking about the communication style. And I think that's one area a lot of people don't look at, don't put emphasis on. It's almost like we think that marriage is like a cake. Ukiingiza kwa oven, itaiva. Yeah? And so we don't put work into it. So what else can you share with us about communication? Because I think it's one of the basic ingredients of a relationship. Na kama haiko, all other things begin to fall apart.
I would say, as you're communicating with your spouse, what is the end game? Okay? Because sometimes you're communicating, but you must ask yourself, as I communicate, what do I have the intention of gaining more understanding of this issue that we are faced with? Or am I communicating to drift us more apart, to bring more confusion in the whole situation? It's important for you to define that for yourself.
Yeah.
Communication is key in every relationship, in every marriage.
Okay.
Because people don't always communicate the same way. My silence could communicate something to you.
Yes.
Based on your own, what you've gone through. The other person, their way of doing things could communicate a negative vibe to you, but that's probably not what they mean. So I would say, as you seek out to even improve your communication style with your spouse, what is your intention? Is it to build the marriage? Is it to bring more understanding? Because marriage is about teamwork.
Yeah.
Marriage is about putting in the work. When we read novels, and we watch all these movies,
Yes.
They kind of give us a false picture about the 50-50. And sometimes you find that just happens. It's better left at the movies, because most of the times that's not the case on ground. That is not the situation on ground.
Yes.
Sometimes, and that's why I was talking about, where are these expectations coming from?
Yeah.
What am I expecting as I'm getting into that marriage? I'm expecting somebody to do things right, never to drop the ball, to always, when I turn like this, I find this has been done the way I expect it. That's just in the fantasy world.
Okay.
It just doesn't happen that way.
Okay. You talked earlier.
Marriage, you have to put in the work.
You have to put in the work. That's very true. Earlier on, you had talked about culture and family cultures. And it seems like the unspoken rule is that once we get married, the culture of the husband's family is the one that we adopt and we keep moving. And I think that's why sometimes, the wife is taken to stay with the mother-in-law a bit to learn some of these things. Unipikie ugali kama ya mama. Si ugali ingine hapa hata ikai ni kama haina msimamo. Is that the right way to do it, or should couples sit down and develop their own culture? Because the Bible tells us, leave father and mother, be joined to your wife, you become one.
Yes.
And so what are your thoughts about that?
I think that takes me back to the differentiation, yeah? When we are talking about families that are so enmeshed, there were no proper roles. And so that's how the man grew up. Okay? So when he gets married, you have to do it like my mother. Ugali has to be done the way my mother did it. The cooking has to be done that way. So that is why it is important for you, as you set out to get married, you define your own, what you want to bring in this marriage. You are bringing a wealth of experience from two different worlds. How do you merge the two? How are you going to run your home? What are you going to bring, and what are you going to leave out? That is very important. But sometimes people don't talk about those things. So they come as surprises. You got married and you never thought that you would be shipped to the village.
Yes.
To stay with mother-in-law.
Yes.
So when you're married, you're told, well, what happens actually when we get wives in this home, we normally take them to help my mom at home. So you're like, you don't understand where that is coming from. You see? So, and that's where what I was saying, before you even settle down, can you create an avenue to talk about these things. Be candid about them. Yes, there's the love. You don't want to hurt each other. You're all about the love and thinking about the wedding. But can you actually be intentional in talking about these things? Because then when you're intentional, before even you get into that marriage, then you find that things become a bit easier. It doesn't mean that you will not have challenges. Challenges will be there. It's part of life. Challenges will be there. But the way you will navigate through those challenges, you will have a better understanding because you already knew somehow this was to come. And when it does come, you have a more positive way of handling it. Yes.
How do you deal with unmet emotional expectations? Because maybe, you definitely got married for companionship, but your husband still wants to hang out with the boys. They're never really there for you. You want somebody to talk to. They're never there. They're always, like most men, they deal with headlines alone. Once they're done with the headlines, they've disappeared. They're always busy out there. And you feel like, as a woman, your expectations emotionally are not being met. How do you deal with that situation?
That takes us back to communication. When you don't communicate, you leave room for a lot of things.
Ooh.
Anger, frustration. When those things are not dealt with, they become mountains. So by the time you want to address them, you find that there's such a huge gap there that you're not able actually to reconcile. So when you notice that, your husband is now just hanging out with the boys, he's spending less time, ask yourself, when did this start? What is taking him to that space? Sometimes you also have to look at yourself. You might be a contributing factor.
Yes.
But most of the times, we want to point the fingers on the other direction. You could have contributed to that. Then talk about it. Be candid about it. Say, when you do this, it makes me feel this. Look at the issue as opposed to attacking the person. Attack, that is the issue. Look at the issue and be at least, look at how you can bring out some positivity out of it. But when things are left unspoken, and you're imagining the other person, the husband could be thinking, that is his way of perhaps unwinding with the boys. And men like that unwinding, with the boys and that kind of thing. You're thinking you should be here with me. So that just creates some rift. So you need to talk about them. You need to talk about those issues.
Okay. Sometimes I hear in issues of infidelity that maybe the wife or the husband had an affair with somebody else because their needs were not being met or the expectations were not being met. Is that a valid justification, or is it just pure selfishness?
It just depends on the circumstances. What is going on in the home? What is going on in the marriage? Let's start from there. Before that person gets to that point of the infidelity. And even when you discover that infidelity, then what do you do? Is there a place for forgiveness?
Or
does the love just go out of the window?
Yes, for many people, that is an unnegotiable, even though the Bible tells us to forgive.
Yes. But takes you back to your marriage vows. What did the marriage vows say?
Yes.
That commitment that you made to God, how do you honor it?
Wow.
In the midst of a situation like this? Does it cease to be?
Wow. Isn't it swallowing?
It's a difficult... the need for forgiveness in a marriage will never go away. It's something that has to be cultivated within the marriage. And I'm not excusing the infidelity, whatever has happened in the marriage, but I'm just saying the need to forgive will never go out of fashion in marriage. So the earlier you get used to it, the better.
Very true.
Yes.
Wow. Before we run out of
Yeah.
time, I've got one more question for you. I'm just wondering, Christabel, does personality have anything to do with this whole discussion when it comes to unmet expectations? Because we have different personalities and they have different personality traits and they see the world differently.
Yes, that does have a role to play. And people say opposites attract.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. You need to work within those how do I define that? You need to look at what positive vibes can you bring from that difference, because imagine if you're all the same.
Yeah.
It will just be one.
Yes.
Yeah, so that brings some excitement, some different dynamics. Yeah, so it's okay for you to have different personalities. It's actually a strength, because then you can build each other up. You know, when this person is doing things, this other person can lift them up in a certain way. Maybe this person is withdrawn, the other person is a go-getter. You know, you can pull together. So it can bring some positive vibes in the marriage. But you need to know how to navigate through that.
Okay. Wow, Christabel,
Yeah?
my time is coming to an end. We must have a part 2 of this discussion because I feel like we are just barely scratching the surface. But as we wrap up for today, what's your parting shot?
I would say that be the change that you want to see in your marriage. In any relationship, you've got a role to play. Be the change. Sometimes we want to be on the outside and to keep pointing the fingers.
Yeah.
Be that change. It starts with me. Be intentional. Yeah, that's what I would say.
I love that. Thank you so much, Christabel, for finding the time to talk to us today. We have been enriched by this conversation, but we must have a part 2.
That's right.
I hope you found something today to benefit your relationship, my friend. It begins with you. Be the change that you want to see. And if there's something I've picked out of this conversation, communication is important. You didn't get married to an angel. They don't read minds. Your wife cannot read your mind. Your husband cannot read your mind. Don't say, mi nimechoka hapana. Tell them, honey, can you help me with the dishes? That is direct communication. My friend, I'm looking forward to part 2 of this conversation. I'm out of time for today.
For this and more of our shows, log on to www.familymediaonline.com to enjoy a wide variety of programs, from current affairs to testimonials and features, pastoral and inspirational shows, kids entertainment, and so much more. Also stream live on www.familymedia.tv.